Alright, so I'm having some issues with my pen on my Surface Pro here. So I am going to be using my finger to write, and I'm also in PowerPoint, so it kind of limits the space I have a little bit too, but we'll make it work. Alright, so you know how to graph this. And because you know how to graph that, you should actually already know how to solve these. So this should not be a big issue. So why don't you pause the computer really quick, find your asymptotes, find some key points on all the sides or in the middle, and then maybe find your x-intercept, your y-intercept as some key points. And so maybe try to get about, 4 to 5 key points, graph it, and then come back and we'll talk about it, and then we will figure out how to solve this. So pause the computer and actually graph it. Okay, I'm back, so hopefully you did some of this work while on your own instead of waiting for me. First of all, I'm going to factor, and is everyone okay? Oops, I wanted highlighter there. These, well, that's really good. Lovely. All right, I can't undo, so we'll try to highlight. Those are your vertical asymptotes underneath there. So x equals 2, x equals -2. Over here, you have your horizontal asymptote. And then it's a good idea to find your x and y-intercept. So here I have my y-intercept. That's where it's going to cross there. And then I didn't quite solve this yet. I decided to wait till I came back. So I set this equal to 0. Going to multiply both sides by the denominator to clear my fraction. So those cancel. And anything times 0 is 0. So x minus 1 equals 0. Add 1 to both sides, and I'm going to get x equals 1. So, let's see, x equals 1 when my output is 0. So that is going to be my intercept. And again, some of you are like, but that's not an asymptote. But remember, when you have one of those middle deals, that's okay. So it can be in the middle. All right, so pause again. You know your asymptotes. You know your x-intercept, you know your y-intercept. So at this point, you should be able to graph it, and then we will come back and chat after that. Okay, so I did a few things, and I went ahead and did my vertical asymptotes, my horizontal asymptotes, and then my x and y-intercept. I plotted those. So we kind of need to figure out what's going on the left side over here. So I'm going to just sub in a point like, say, -3. And that's my input, and I'm just trying to figure out what my output would be. So that would be, what, -4, and then -3 squared is 9 minus 4, so that would be, what, 5? All right, so at -3, you're at a -4/5. So I kind of know that this is bound by my asymptotes, and I got something that looks like that. All right, now if you know multiplicity and stuff like that, you know that something kind of similar looking is on the other side. So let's shove 3 in there. Sub 3 in, you get 3 minus 1 is what? 2. 9 again, minus 4 is 5. So 2/5. So I'm going to come over here and go up 2/5. And again, I know it's going to kind of be in the opposite quadrant because of multiplicity. I don't have any duplicate factors. So really now all I have to do is on the middle. So since it's crossing my horizontal asymptote, I know it's going to kind of keep crossing it. So really, I'm just kind of curious what's happening here at a -1. So I'm going to go ahead and sub in a -1. I get what? A -2. -1 times -1 is a +1. So that's what? -3. So I get a +2/3. So over here, I'm at 2/3. So at this point, I kind of know that this is coming down, and again, it's going to cross that asymptote, which is okay because it's not really the asymptote for the middle guy. It's an asymptote for the outside guys. All right, so now I have my graph, which is amazing. So now I just have to see, when is this greater than or equal to 0? And so we just have to kind of think about it. So when is the output greater than or equal to 0? Well, here's, what color am I in? I'm on red. Okay, so right here, and why is this not taking highlighter? Sorry, having some pen issues here. Let's see if this works. All right, so right here, and then is everyone okay that all of that up here, right, is greater than or equal to 0? And then pretty much all of this over here is as well, because the output is all above 0 over here. Here it's equal to 0 or above. So then I just need to write my interval notation for that. And again, my interval notation is focusing on what x values give you the output that is greater than or equal to 0. All right, so if I think about that, I'm like, okay, so I start at -2, but it's not included because that would mean it landed on the asymptote, which it can't. And then my x values continue, so all the way until I hit this x value, which that one actually worked, so that's good. I can use a bracket. And then I have a gap, and then I pick up over here again with x values, right, because the y values are positive here, and these go all the way to infinity. So that would be, 2 all the way to infinity. And that would be my interval notation for this function. Now, some people are like, well, if they just want to know to solve this, do I really have to graph it? And the answer is no. So why don't you make just an x number line and put kind of the key points on there. So our asymptotes and our values where we got our x and y intercepts, and then we'll come back and try to solve this that way. So pause, make a nice little number line, and I will catch up with you in just a second. All right, so what I did here is I just graphed a number line, and I put our asymptotes there that are the vertical asymptotes, and obviously they're undefined output. And we know that at 0 we had an output of 1/4. That was our y-intercept, and at 1 value of x, we had an output of 0, which was our x-intercept, which again, that's okay because it crosses that horizontal, which is not a big deal. That's kind of in the middle. But again, if you didn't graph it, you still need to get these guys, and then you still need to find your x and y-intercept. Horizontal's not going to matter as much on this guy, because we're kind of paying attention to what's happening on the x-axis here, so it won't matter. All right, so first of all, we need to figure out what's going on over here. So a good idea is to sub in a number down here. So you can sub in whatever you want. So I might sub in, say, a -3 for x and just see what happens. And so we already did this when we graphed, I think. So -3 sub in, you get a -4/5 for output pit. Sorry. So is that greater than or equal to 0? No. So this is not going to be part of our solution set. All right. Sorry. Another one maybe to sub in nicely would be something in this range, which is a -1. And I think we subbed that in earlier as well. So if I pick a number in between here, -1, again, sub it in, and you will end up getting a positive 2/3, which is good. And so already, just looking at what I have so far, I can tell that obviously this is undefined. This is positive, this was positive, this was 0. So far, all of that's good. All right, so now I need to go back, and I'm going to grab a pen here. All right, so now I need to kind of figure out what's happening between that x-intercept and the next asymptote. So I got to pick a value in here. So maybe 1.5, 3/2, something like that might be a good idea to kind of see, you know, what's going on. All right, so let's see. 3/2 minus 1 is what? 1/2. And then 3/2 squared would be what? 9/4. Minus 4 would be what? 16/4. Which gives me what? -7/4. Multiplied by the reciprocal. So 4/7 negative. And what is that? Is that -2/7, I think. So basically it's telling me that this value over here is negative, okay? So obviously that is not going to work. All right, so then the only other thing is I have to pick a value over here. So again, I think we picked 3 earlier when we were doing some math, and I think we had an output of 2/5, which is back to being positive again. So I'm like, okay, so this works, and then all of this works. All right, I'm going to get a highlighter again. So basically, I tested points over here, and they did not work, so this did not work. Tested points in here, they did. Tested a point here, and I got a negative output, and then over here, so I'm good. So at this point, we can write our negative, or sorry, our notation by just, let's see. So let's get a pen here. All right, so -2, all of this, 1 is included because that was okay. Union, pick up at what? A +2, and then go off to infinity. So that's kind of how I could do it. I can just test different areas and say, oh, yeah, negative, you're not included. Negative, you're not included. Oh, positive or 0, we're good. And then just kind of go about it that way. So that's another option to solve these.